that you didn't even know that was there, that you're already kind of using in your plot.
Adding a point of interest, a real point of interest in a story is also very important because it adds realism to the story.
So have we ever found research that has surprised us, where we found unusual places for our information for research? Something that has surprised or shocked you?
Well, for me, the weirdest thing at all was I was doing research on a cruise ship around the turn of the century, and you can actually go online and find videos of them doing games on a cruise ship. So you see their swimwear, you see what they're playing on a cruise ship, which was just totally amazing. That just blew me away. That you could actually find videos from that time frame.
That brings up, actually, I was going to go back just a little bit. That brings up what I was going to mention too, is that YouTube actually is a good place to research things a lot of times. I have trouble sometimes with fight scenes, and YouTube is very good for watching fight scenes for movies to figure out, how to choreograph your own fight scenes in your writing. But getting back to that, the question of surprising things, like it's amazing how obscure you can find things. Like I needed to have part of the setting of the third book, which is coming out next year, is in the British Embassy in Berlin in the 1800s, which is not the same place it is now. And I actually found the floor plan of the British Embassy in Berlin in the 1800s.
It's just amazing. And you can find pictures from the 1800s, of 1700s.
Yeah.
That of actual events and places that took place where they actually have photographs. So it's just amazing.
Or I use several historical figures in mind, and again, this is the third one. One of the characters is the wife of the British ambassador to Germany, and obviously she was a real person. And when I started writing her, I kind of pictured her as an older, kind of matronly woman in her 60s, and I was doing the research on her and found out that, well, she was actually 35, which is younger than I am now. So I had to go back and completely rework her character because she was a different age than what I had pictured in my head. So.
See, that was going to be one of my other sort of follow-up questions, is has research changed your stories in general? As for surprising spots for research, I find the most fascinating thing for me is that there is this wealth of information from White Wolf on really obscure kind of stuff. If you're writing kind of an urban fantasy, not just vampires, wraith, werewolves, and changelings. And it's a really fascinating thing because the guys who did the work did it with such sincerity and love. That's a nice kind of jump-off spot. Don't use it as a primary source, but it's a good jump-off point. So, but yeah, has research changed characters or stories for anybody?
A little bit. Since I write epic fantasy, so there's not really, it's all new world and everything like this. And some people think if you write fantasy, you don't have to research stuff. But I researched castle layouts, like castle, I can't remember what century it was, but they didn't have corridors. It was room to room to room, so that kind of changed how my characters moved through their space. And things like rushes, a lot of people think that it's just straw all over the floor, but it's not. They actually wove them in mats. And to the point where my editor actually said, this isn't right. I was like, no, it is right. Done the research. It's like, yes, it's all mats, and they put herbs in it, and then they pick them up, and they put them, when the company comes over, they put them away. Because the women had the long dresses, I had to do costume research too. Had the long dresses, they couldn't walk very well. It was just kind of like a stable with straw. So that changed a lot of things in different parts of my book.
I was going to say no, but that's just because I have a tendency to make it fit. I'm good at working in other people's
That's
universes.
kind of what I was going to say too.
Yeah.
Because
You can say no to my question.
I kind of do the research before I start writing the book, so I know what I want to put in there, and the story fits the research.
Well, yeah, that's sort of what happens. I'm sure we're all avid and sociopathic readers of history, which is kind of where that comes from. Like I said, World War II, Nazi werewolves storming the beaches. Although I guess they really wouldn't be storming the
The
beaches.
kink throws in when you're doing this and you would say, what if? Which is that's the writer's biggest thing, is that changes the whole scenario, because you say, what if this happened instead of that happened? And then, of course, everything changes.
Right. Anybody have some fantastic pieces of advice when it comes to research?
Yeah, don't let it take over your life, because it sure can. Because you'll forget to write your story because you're doing so much research. Because it takes you from one spot to, especially if you're doing it on the internet, because you'll see this and you'll say, oh, that's so cool. Well, there's a link to that, and so that's so cool. And the next thing you know, you spent 5 hours on research and you haven't written anything on your book that day.
Yeah, don't use the research as an excuse to not write.
I'm going to say that's happened to probably every single person on this panel, maybe every
Otherwise,
person in this room.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned it.
Yeah. Oh no, many hours have been wasted just sort of like, oh, da 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 da. Like, and some subjects can be more amorphous and kind of suck you in, like it's the gelatinous blob, than others. Like Arthurian legend. Now, also a piece of advice: find out what you want with that, and
Get out.
go, and then leave, because 6 hours later, I still don't know what I was knowing, but I can tell you Morgan Le Fay is kind of cool. Anybody else? Advice?
Don't get your research from movies.
Yeah.
There's so many times I've read something, because horses are kind of my passion, and when I was growing up in pony club and dressage and all that stuff. It's just so bad if you have a story and all of a sudden you're talking about slapping the reins on your horse's neck, and it's like, that's not how it's done.
That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works.
It just is bad. It's just bad. So, find some. Even I had some friend who was also a writer, and he just put on Facebook, hey, does anyone know anything about this? Because he's writing like an epic fantasy too. And I was like, well, here are some resources. And I just put all these links. I was like, here's the breeds back in the day, back in medieval times. They all came from it. You just.
Living out in the country like I do, I have a lot of friends that raise horses.
Mhm.
So that's really a good resource for
Yeah.
animal husbandry and different things like that, is,
Mhm.
your local farmers.
If you're writing fantasy, there's probably going to be critters around.
Yeah.
I was just going to say about the movies, that some of, they've spent a lot of money on the research.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for example, The Patriot, which was set in South Carolina.
Right.
You go and you watch all the special features, which I do for so many of my favorite movies. I watch them. They have, they've checked. They have the uniforms
some movies
correct.
aren't
They
very
have,
good.
it's,
Some of
Some of them are fantastically done.
Yep,
incredibly
not
done.
all of them.
Not all of them. Like The City of Life and Death, which is about the Japanese occupation of Nanjing, and it's a Sino-Japanese production, is meticulously researched, and it's only a third of how bad it should have been, with that kind of meticulous research. That's a really good movie. That's a movie you could use as a primary resource. I don't so much know with the
Shogun, I don't know if it could be.
yeah, no. The Patriot is also, the Patriot's in a weird, like, it's a problematic favorite for me.
Well, but the research they did on the uniforms
stuff.
and
Everything, yeah, like, it's
placement
really,
and, I mean,
really
the
pretty.
story
and
is
really-
derived from several people, but not one
Yeah.
particular.
It's like, it's really
kernel.
pretty,
Yeah.
and it's really well done, and I grew up an hour from Marion, Virginia. They get a little offensive about Francis Marion sometimes, so, because that's what the town's named for, but. So yeah, movies, no. Well, I guess it kind of depends
You
on
just have to know if the movie has been really well
Who is-
researched, and then
yeah.
you go, oh, that's neat, but yeah, you've seen a lot of movies where I'm just like, oh no, that's
Well, as far as, I have a zombie mystery series, but so as far as I can see from my series, Romero ruined it because he ruined zombies with brain-eating zombies, where zombies never did that. They never ate brains, so.
Yeah, I guess that would be a question. Have you found that sometimes the research gets kind of muddled because of people who've done popular things? Like, I did a panel a couple of weeks ago on werewolves, and I got yelled at Because my stipulation is a lot of the stuff we think about werewolves comes from